Alrighty, sports fans. I've got a new video, and today I'm going to show you the process that I went through to paint my Bloody Goons by Punga Miniatures, their latest Patreon, this Ogre Blood Bowl team. And I came into regarding how I actually put together this video. I've been hoisted by mine own Amazon purchasing habits because I bought the absolute cheapest boom arm I could find. And there's a little problem in that it's got that X rotation and it's got that Y rotation, but it ain't got that Z rotation, so I can't turn my camera down to look at this. And I was trying to figure out how everyone else was making videos of them painting their miniatures on camera, and eventually I figured out that oh yeah, everyone's just got their thing tilted down. So I think I'm gonna have to upgrade that. But other than that, here I just instead, I started recording a bit, but it was getting very, very annoying looking through the camera to actually have to paint. So instead I just took a picture after every step in the process. Okay, and also, so far, just painting wise, I'm not an expert by any means. I very much so just do the old Citadel classic base coat, wash, highlight, or the just slap chop everything. I never really sat down and tried to paint stuff for the express purpose of actually trying to make it look good. But I watched a Dana Howell YouTube video about easy beginner painting friendly method or something. And she painted this Landsknecht with this magenta shading, and I was like, oh my god, that looks so cool. And this looks achievable. I think I could actually do that. So I tried my best to paint using that guide. Step one, we have got everything just 3D printed out. Some of these nobblers are repeats because some of them failed, and I just printed extras just in case that happened. And some of these guys, I had to green stuff up because they were filled with holes. I don't think there was anything wrong with the STL file. Just my printer had some... after I finished this, I took a look at my FEP, and it was so incredibly messed up. I'm genuinely amazed that it, printed at all. It was so horribly mangled and, crunched up. So I guess you have to change that every once in a while, apparently. But yeah, so far, just a little bit of green stuff. It's honestly, I should have done the whole mix it with milliput thing, because working with just straight up green stuff to fill holes, I found very difficult to work with. Especially it seems to start curing relatively quickly, and once it gets hard, it's really hard to push around and move around. Okay, then we have primed everything. We primed it with a sort of brownish gray, and then we did the whole base coat, all the metallics, the just gun metal on everything that will eventually at some point become a metallic. Then we've got the pre-shade, a pinkish magenta color on all of the skin tones. See, I accidentally started painting this before I realized I was moving on to the next step. And this is the thing that I really wanted to try to preserve throughout the painting process and not cover up the deep dark pink shadows. Then we put the browns on everything else, including the metallics. So everything has got a layer of paint on it at this point. And this will be all the shading for the rest of the process. Okay, then we started layering on the skins. And I can tell I probably should not have started off with this bright of a flesh tone. I probably should have started a bit pinker or darker. I just went straight for the neutral peach color skin tone. Then we started putting the greens on the goblins. I think this is a really, really nice green with how it's complementing this pink. But yeah, I probably would have went a little different with the ogres. Then we shaded all the skin tones, just kind of trying to make it blend more naturally, just to make that transition a little more subtle. And then what were we doing? Oh yeah, we cleaned up the metallics just because they started getting kind of lost in that brown shading process. So, just went back over that with the gunmetal. Then we highlighted it, and I wanted to try to do the life hack, the quick metallic Sharpie as a means to highlight, which I think it actually Well, it was kind of difficult on these very finagly little spiky bits, but I actually kind of like how it went onto the mini. It was quite like thin, like you would want from a paint. It was very, very easy, like compared to a brush, and a million times faster. But afterwards I realized that there's like I don't know exactly. I know Sharpies are alcohol based, but it almost acted like oil paint and that other colors on top just like beaded up on it instead of like flowing naturally onto it. So not exactly sure why that happened, but if I ever do mess with the metallic Sharpies again, I'll only ever use them as the absolute final last like highlighting step rather than like a in the middle of the process like highlighting layer. So then now here originally I wanted to put a thin layer of orange transparent paint over all the metallics to make it look like an orangey colored metal. But instead, like it didn't really go on top of that like Sharpie very well. It's just kept beating up. So I decided, screw it, we'll just make it look like rust. Then I put white paint because I wanted to kind of make this look like it was white paint over this like rusty metal. And you got into that kind of funny thing that happens in miniature painting where sometimes you have to paint a rock to make it look more like a rock or paint dirt to make it look like dirt. Here I had to try to paint paint to make it look like paint. So I just didn't thin it down super much, just left it kind of thick and chunky, which since it was white paint anyway, I would have had to put on 200 layers in order for this to actually cover and to have it look smooth. So, I'm not mad with it being kind of thick in this part. Then I added some more rust on top of the white paint to I wanted it to look like rust streaks like running down from the metallics over the white paint. Didn't, like, I think it kind of reads like that, but it's not great. It's certainly, like, if I were to do it again, I think I would kind of, like, add some flow improver or something so that I could actually drag down the streaks instead of it kind of just like all like balled up and like started forming like that those surface tension kind of things. But I think you can kind of see I think it reads as like rusty metal over white paint. But yeah, I would definitely try to get fancier with that in the future. Then I added some more metal. I just like stippled on some silver on top of everything to kind of I wanted to try to make it look like where paint and rust had been like scraped off and like bright silver metal showed up underneath it. But because of the thinness of the silver paint, it just kind of you can see like a few specks of the like glitteriness of like those metallic whatever it is, like the flakes that they put in there. I think if I were to do this again, this is where I would have gone in with the metallic Sharpie to create those little chips in the armor. Then we've base coated all the cloths and natural things and everything that would eventually become like the team colors, just a nice cream color. I think it was pale sand was the color I used. I think it was this Vallejo model color right there. Then we added contrast paint. I was using Army Painter speed paint to add some oranges onto everything. And I realize now that it kind of looks a little like prison uniform-y, but I wanted to just recreate the like box art from the Games Workshop Blood Bowl Ogre team because I really liked how that like orange and white sort of creamsicle color complemented the like skin of the nobblers. And I think it ultimately turned out pretty fine. But anyway, then we added the pallid bone onto all of the, onto everything else that's not orange. And we added some highlights to the skin. You can see there's some more green on top of these nobbler noses and on their ears. Then we added a bit to the ogre flesh as well. From beginning to end, I think this probably took me maybe like 16-ish hours, like about like an hour per mini, give or take. I probably could have made these guys look even better if I like doubled that amount of time and like went in with another glaze over every single highlight to really make it all blend and naturally and look smooth. But I don't really mind the sort of painterly look that the like harsh highlights give. So then we did some cleanup on various little pieces and bits, and I added the brown to the balls. Now these reroll markers and this like coin or whatever, these were kind of my like test pieces, and before I added paint onto like the ogres and the nobblers, I would like paint it onto this first to see if it looked good. Because if these ended up terrible, then that's fine. I don't really care about these guys as much as I care about the team itself. So then we added some highlights to the bone. You can see we started adding some of that cream color back on top of the hoods and on the skulls and everything. Then we added like a little bit of a wash. I just wanted to see how it would work to sort of blend everything together onto the tokens and the reroll markers, especially because I was painting really fast on these guys, so there were lots of mistakes that needed to be hidden. And yeah, then I went in with like an orange fluorescent paint, which has like truly terrible coverage. I've learned those fluorescent paints, it just it looked very bright, so I thought it'd be a good highlight color, but it honestly, you like cannot see it at all on top of these like orange contrast paints. Yeah, I probably would have had to do a couple of coats in order for you to be able to see that. Then we added some white highlights on top of that cream color just to really raise the like volume, or whatever the proper term is, for just increasing the highlights on all the bone parts. Maybe I should have really gone in on all the stitches and everything. I just didn't trust my brush work. Then we added some yellow highlights. Oh, you can also see somewhere in the process this guy lost his little tuft of fur on his skull, and I just could not find it in the disaster that is my craft room right now. But yeah, we added some yellow, and you can actually see that over these oranges. I'm not very happy with how this guy's mask turned out, because the highlight, I think my paint was a little too runny, and it just kind of like looked like an extra glaze on top of this orange, which is not ideal. And you can kind of see that, like, I think on the re-roll marker it doesn't look half bad. I probably should have painted the edges on everything instead of like these middle parts. That was probably a mistake, but that's why these are my test pieces. Okay, then I love how like goblins look with like the pink knuckles and noses. I think if I was going to do the like subtle transition from one color to another color, this is the place I very much so should have done that, because just adding pink on top of the green looks a little out of place. But I just added little dots of pink everywhere where like the skin is like stretched tight over the like bone. So we added some little pink dots on all the knuckles and the pink nipples and the pink noses and kneecaps and elbows and everything. This I genuinely could not remember what I did. I think it was just some minor cleanup on this step. Then we added some red eyes onto the nobblers, just some little dots on them. Now we're just getting into the super fast, like, various little details phase. We drew some tattoos onto the ogre skin. I used a micron pen for this, which did not go on as well as I probably would have liked. It was kind of like a bit scratchy, but I eventually managed to make it work. Then we started moving on to the bases, gave everyone a coat of brown, and I started adding the rims. Hopefully, just if I ever do like record with these guys, this should make them a bit faster to see on camera, like who is of which position. Then we added the bases. Originally, I was going to keep just the grassy flock, as the only thing on the base, just because in the middle of the tiles of my bloodboard pitch, there only is grass. You never have like a mini halfway over a line. So I thought it would honestly look more natural with just grass, but they just looked so plain and not visually interesting that I had to add some more stuff to break it up. And also these ogres and stuff, you might be able to mistake them as just like pit fighters or bodyguards or something. They don't necessarily have a lot of stuff that really has them like yelling a football player at them. Maybe like this Nobbler with the catching gloves. He looks pretty ready to play football, but everyone else kind of just looks like that they could just be a marauder chaos ogre or something. So I did add the white lines and the splatches of red blood on the field, and I do think it makes them look infinitely more football-y. Okay, then here is my finished project. Just put them out on the pitch. I'm honestly quite happy with how the Nobblers turned out, all in all. The skin looks a little bit diseased right now, with probably a bit too much of that purple showing up. I probably should have done a bit more of that layering of the base coat just over all the ogres. Like when you're zoomed out all the way, I think it sort of comes together and reads as a skin tone. Yeah, that's probably one thing I would do different if recreating this method on another team. And here's the backs of them. You can see I added the numbers on the backs of the bases for the players, which if I were to change anything about these sculpts, I really, really like them. I am a very big fan of how they look, but I kind of wish that they just had like one consistent place for there to be like numbers added to them, like player numbers. Because like you can kind of see that with like the official GW teams, they'll like all have like clear smooth shoulder pads, or like the dwarfs have that like big smooth back plate. So maybe this could have been like maybe that's kind of what they were going for with having like the big areas on the back, like for you to add tattoos to put their like player numbers on, which I guess I could have done. But yeah, I wish, yeah, they just had like one consistent smooth place for numbers to be added to. That's the only thing I would change about these guys. Otherwise, I know compared to the vast majority of painters and paintings you've seen on the internet, these guys don't look great. But compared to everything else that I've ever painted, these guys are very much so in the like upper echelon of anything that I've ever painted before. So I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. But I can tell, even just like looking at them, there are like a million things I would have done differently, which are all certainly lessons that I will take into my next project. And like so many things. Like I probably could have made the silver on these guys look a bit brighter and better. Just tons and tons. Like the more I look at these guys, the more I realize tons of opportunities to have cleaned stuff up and like just make them look better. But again, I could have spent forever on these guys if I wanted to, and I guess I'd rather just move on to my next project and leave these guys how they are. I'm happy with how the ogre team turned out. I do think that this will be a good team to help get my friends into Blood Bowl, so that they will have these guys that they can just absolutely pummel and destroy game after game. I hear nothing about except how terrible ogres are in Blood Bowl, and I imagine them having that all movement 5s to get across that movement 6 no man's land is gonna be especially brutal. Oh god, I'm also just realizing I could have cleaned up the base here, but whatever. I am curious to find out like how people generally handle depicting what skills their players have, like for like league games, because I've seen people do the added extra like base rim with the skills around it, But since I've got like a little ball token that's like a little disc for you to slot the minis into, that probably wouldn't work. The other thing, I've seen like the skill bands, like you just add colored rubber bands to them to denote what kind of skill they have, which I guess that does work, but it seems like it might look a little lame or tacky just to add like, rubber bands on top of your super nicely, beautifully painted minis. So, if anyone's got any ideas for solutions to that, please do tell. So, yeah, nope, that about covers it. I do think, yeah, so that Dana Howell, the Wolf method, the white prime, metallic, overshade, layers, then finishing touches. I don't know particularly how beginner friendly it is. Like, I guess, so, like, if you are, I think it was an appropriate step up in going from just the classic Citadel method and or slap chop to like the next step of trying to make a nice looking mini. So I do quite like how the like magenta skin looks. I do definitely think I could go more subtle for that. You also, I don't know if you can exactly see it here after the layers of paint, but you can kind of see where like the supports were attached to the back of this mini that were broken off after the like 3D printing process, which I guess I don't know how you're supposed to fill those in, like maybe green stuff and then sand it down. That honestly seems like even more annoying than dealing with like mold lines on like a plastic injection kit or whatever the GW minis are made out of. Yep, so hopefully I can lose some games with these guys. All right, that's it.